welcome to my short introduction to power braking. There are three basic power techniques that I want to introduce to you. The first one is the long lever. Okay, what I mean by long lever is that you can generate more power if you are hitting with a longer arm position. That means your shoulder is up high. From this position, the hand can come through at a higher speed than it can if we're in this position and coming through. Now this principle is the same for, say, a game of golf. With a longer club, the further it is away, the faster is the speed at the end of the club. If you were using a shorter club, you can't generate as much club head speed. So what we're getting is we're trying to get club head speed or tip head speed. So to do that, on our final execution phase, we should be elevated slightly so that our arm is longer down here. Okay, the second thing I want to discuss, which will add power to your game, is what's called, or what's known about a shorter muscle being stronger. An example of this is when you do bench press. If you're bench pressing, in this position, you're much stronger. Now the reason is that the pectoral muscles are in a shorter position, and also the triceps are in a shorter position. So being here, you can push much harder than if you're in this position, where your triceps are almost fully extended, and also your pectorals are fully extended. So this position is weak, this position is very strong. So to work that into our brake, this is a reason you see a lot of players, instead of gripping the cue at the back, they bring their hand forward up the cue. Now what this does, with your hand further forward up the cue, this position of the upper arm, which is where most of the power comes from, is not as far up, as far back. Your muscles, mainly the pectorals and the front deltoids, are in a shorter position. So when this arm is in closer, you can actually come through with much more power than you can if the arm is further back and the humerus is up higher. So that's another thing to consider, is try bringing your hand up the cue so that you shorten the muscles and put them into a stronger position during the brake. You can also use that when you just need to play a power screw shot, when you really want to hit the ball hard. Try shortening your cue and you'll find you can accelerate much more easily. Okay, the third thing which is very important is known as eccentric contractions. I used to coach shot put at a national level, and we used to work a lot on developing more force using eccentric contractions. Now this is also, sometimes people talk about timing, and really what eccentric contractions are is when you work them well, it looks like you have very good timing. It makes generating power look effortless. So an example of how eccentric timing works, say I use this block of chalk. If I want to flick this into the air, it's quite easy because I place my thumb behind the other finger, the muscle was contracted, and then it kind of accelerated with a lot more force. If I just put chalk on my thumb like this and try to flick it, I've got no power. So eccentric contractions give you a lot more power than you normally would. Another example is when you want to jump up very high. If you go down first and then jump, you've got more power. Also, if you tried to throw a ball, if you just started here and went forward, you'd have little power. But if you bring the arm back and then throw, you're developing eccentric power in the different muscles. So to do this when we're braking, we've got a few muscles that react. The main one is probably in the shoulder area, the pectorals, and also the front deltoid, and even possibly the latissimus dorsi muscles come into this a bit. But you've also got the wrist here, all right? And the wrist can flex back, and then if it's flexing back and coming through, it's contracting eccentrically, which means the wrist can play a big part in final acceleration. So what we want to do to get that is we need to move backwards before we move forwards. Okay, so to develop those things, one thing we do is at the back of the swing, on the back swing, we tend to pause at the back, then we start to bring the body forward, and even upwards. The upwards part helps to lengthen your lever, and the forward part brings the shoulder forward, causing an eccentric contraction up here in the deltoid and the pectorals. Right, so the shoulder comes forward, then that pulls the arm forward, and then the wrist is pulled back, and then finally the wrist comes forward under eccentric contraction. And so there's a kind of a movement, shoulder, upper arm, wrist coming through. Now if you can get the combination of the contraction happening at the right time with the right movement, you'll develop a lot more power. So let's break a couple of balls from the side and see how this looks. Okay, first I go down and I want to line up the balls very accurately. Now once I've got that, I stand up, I move my feet forward, I bring my hand up the cue into a shorter position, and then I kind of think about the timing, how I'm going to pause, and when I feel comfortable. Okay, I timed that one good. 4 balls swinging off that break. Okay, to save you some rewinding, I'll play a couple more shots, a couple more breaks from the side, and you can have a look, and they might change a little bit each one. But essentially, watch the timing, the cue slows down at the back, the shoulder comes forward, then the hand comes through, then I tighten the wrist at the end and try to get the final acceleration. Okay, this one I'll play a little bit more easily, so that the movement's not so jerky, hopefully, and try to combine the timing. Okay, I've still got good power on that, but without really giving it too much effort. Okay, there's a few other things you should consider when you're braking. Let's talk about the legs. So you notice when I was braking, I kind of rocked backwards and forwards a little bit. That is to help set up a kind of, say, the timing, so that when I come forward to move the shoulder forward, okay, I'm kind of timing that with my stroke. So I'm kind of rocking, getting that timing a little bit. So the legs go back, then the shoulder comes forward, and then I stroke. So I kind of rock them to get that timing, and also when I hit the ball, I come forward and up. Now I'm coming up so that I can increase the lever and get more speed with my hand, but I'm also coming forward. That helps for 2 reasons. One, coming forward increases the speed of the cue, but more importantly, coming forward brings the shoulder forward. It's even possible to rotate that shoulder forward. But if you do, it gets a bit hard to get accurate. But you could potentially get even more power by kind of rotating that shoulder forward before you hit. But generally, I just come straight through this way, okay, kind of up and forward with the legs. Now, if I'm hitting the ball kind of very accurate and I've got all my timing and I really need the power, I'll sometimes actually jump off the ground when I hit the ball. But you only really do that perhaps when you're feeling very confident with your stroke. Okay, another thing that's important is the bridge length. Now obviously a longer bridge length allows you to take a bigger backswing and to create more speed, but you're sacrificing accuracy. And hitting the cue ball accurately and into a very accurate hit onto the front ball is crucial. Now that's the main reason why tend to get our hands up a bit closer. Now mine comes up to about 13 inches when I'm braking. Okay, if I really want to be sure about the hit, I might get it up a bit closer even. But generally about 13 inches is okay for me. You'll notice I use the open bridge. I think I don't have a very good loop bridge, at least it doesn't feel very stable to me. and the open bridge works for me. I don't find that it's any limitation. So you can do it either way, loop bridge or open bridge. Okay, the pause, another important thing. Now the reason why there's a pause or close to a pause at the back is because the tendency of most players is for them to come forward too quickly and the arm races ahead of the body, and therefore they lose out on the eccentric contractions. So making sure you pause at the back allows you more time to get the shoulder moving forward, and then you get the real whip effect, that eccentric contraction. So the pause at the back, and then accelerate through. Okay, 2 balls. Okay, let's talk about the wrist. Quite a lot of power can be developed through the wrist. If you time the shot, allow the wrist to flex back and then come through. So, you know, you can develop a lot of power through the chest by kind of flexing and coming through the chest, or you can use the wrist. Ideally, you can combine both together. Now, when you're breaking and the arm's moving very fast, you maybe won't feel like you get a wrist flick. But what you can do is feel like when you're coming to hit the ball, you want to grab the cue very tightly. And when you do grab it tightly, it tends to flick it forward, even if you're moving too fast to deal with. So a very tight gripping of the cue ball just before you hit it, I find that adds a few % more power to the break. Okay, so I'll just tense the wrist up on impact. If we had slow-mo, we might have seen the wrist flick forward then. Another thing you might consider when you're trying to get the wrist to flex or flick through is to make sure the wrist is kind of relaxed during the backswing. Okay, because when it's relaxed during the backswing, when you come through, it will flex back at the back. But make sure that you don't keep it relaxed, otherwise it may not come through fast at the end. So kind of have it reasonably relaxed and then tense up as you come through, and the wrist will have been pushed back by the movement of the body forward. Okay, the last thing to discuss is the follow-through. And I think follow-through is not so much a deliberate thing. If you do develop the power, your cue has to follow through. So I'm not really trying to follow through, I'm just trying to hit that ball with maximum power. And I think you can see in the videos my cue is coming through several feet and into the air. So just have a look at the follow-through. It's kind of natural, it's not forced, but if you're hitting the ball and stopping here and bringing the cue back, you're really not developing much power. Okay, couple of balls in off the break. You can see the cue just has to go through there. And when I'm really hitting the ball well, I almost feel my arm launch to full extension when I'm really combining all the timing very well. So it would be even longer than on that shot. Okay guys, thanks for watching. If you can get your break with about this much power, I've found that I can make a ball about 75% of the time, even on this table, which is quite small pockets, probably a bit smaller than the IPT. So work on that and let me know if you have any questions.